Good afternoon. This is chapter 34. I'm not even halfway through the book yet. Alfie stepped over some charred wooden beams that had fallen to the floor. Alfie, I'm not sure that's safe in there, mate. I said, but he stopped me with a look that said, "This is my house, not yours." We followed him into the burnt ruin, picking our feet through the ashes on the ground and keeping a wary eye on the beams above us. Alfie stopped by the bookcases. Close up, the damage was even more obvious. Literally hundreds of books had been destroyed. Nothing was undamaged. Any pages that were not burnt to nothing were covered in a film of greasy soot. From what I could see, these were all old books with hard, plain covers, not like the ones with illustrations and bright jackets that I had, like these. I picked one up that seemed less damaged and flicked it open, peering at a page in the dim light. I couldn't read a word. "What's this?" I asked. Alfie came closer and glanced at it. "That's Confessions by Augustine of Hippo." "Who's Christine the Hippo?" "Of Hippo. It's a place, or was anyway, in North Africa. Augustine is Saint Augustine, you know." His tone suggested that he really expected me to know who Saint Augustine was. "Never heard of her. What language is it?" Alfie squinted at me and said in a quizzical tone, "It is a he, not a she, and the language is Latin." He didn't need to add obviously, because it was in his voice. "What's it about?" Alfie took it from me with his good hand and fingered the sooty pages sadly. It is probably the world's first autobiography. It is a bit heavy-going in places by modern standards, but rather compelling nonetheless. "Rather compelling nonetheless? Who speaks like that?" I said to myself. Out loud, I said, "You've read it?" Alfie nodded. "In Latin?" I squeaked, and he nodded again, a bit shyly. Roxy was next to us by now. "Hey, Mr. Brainbox, go on, read some out then." Reluctantly, I thought, Alfie began reading aloud as Roxy shone the light from her phone on the page. I didn't understand a word, but Roxy was wide-eyed. "Wow," was all she said when he faltered to a stop. "Do some more." But Alfie placed the book back on the shelf. "These were all mine," he said. "Mine and Mum's." I left him alone for a moment while I checked out the yard. The chicken coop in the corner was destroyed, and several burnt chickens with blackened feathers lay among the ashes. "I think you'll go to Scaped," I called to Alfie, but he didn't reply, and I immediately hoped he hadn't heard. It sounded as though I was saying, "Oh well, look on the bright side," when really there wasn't much of a bright side at all. Roxy had wandered off to the corner of the room we were in. "What's in here?" she said, kicking charred bits of wood off the top of a thick metal trunk. Alfie said something I didn't understand under his breath and knelt down next to the trunk. There was a hinged metal closure on the lid with holes for a padlock, but no lock. He opened the lid. More books," said Roxy. "They look okay. Unburnt." Alfie closed the lid again and stood up facing us. For the first time, I could detect slightly less sad emptiness on his face. There was something in his eyes that might have been hope. "We have to take these. Take them away from here." I lifted one end of the trunk by the handle. It was heavy. "You're kidding, Alfie. I can't carry this. It's far too heavy. Besides, the police or fire brigade or somebody will look after it. They'll take everything away and keep it safe." Alfie shook his head defiantly. "No, we take it now." "Alfie, listen. We take it now. There was no arguing with him, so step after step we lugged the trunk through the shadowy woods. I kept changing my carrying arm. Alfie could not, and so we paused often for rests. Roxy tried to make herself useful by shining her phone on the ground and warning us of holes and roots that would trip us up. The thin metal handles dug into my palms and the weight pulled at my shoulders, but eventually we saw the flickering pink of the neon garage sign. We dragged the trunk inside and slumped down on the chairs. I looked round. We were soot and sweat streaked. Somehow I was going to have to clean up before I got back into bed. So, are you going to show us what's inside? I asked, flexing my aching arms. Alfie lifted the lid to reveal a stack of books, 15 or 20 of them. They were thick volumes with stiff leather covers, and I went to pick one up. Careful, warned Alfie. Please. I wiped my hands on my shirt and lifted one out, turning it to read the gold lettering on the spine. Barnaby Rudge, I read out. I looked at Alfie quizzically. Not one of his better-known titles. Try this one. He handed me another book. Great Expectations. Oh, yeah, that was a TV series. Mum watched it. So these are all by what's-his-name? Charles Dickens, said Roxy. He wrote Oliver Twist as well. Alfie smiled. You have read it? Roxy shrugged. Sort of. Here it is. She flipped open the cover. There was a handwritten inscription which she read out. To dear Alva, with my compliments, Charles Dickens. She gave a low whistle. So this is a full set of Charles Dickens's books. Are they all signed by him? But who's this Alva? It can't be you. She peered sideways through narrowed eyes. There was a long pause, and then she drawled, Can it? Alfie coughed. An old relative, and it is not quite the full set. One was stolen, or somehow went, I don't know. Suffice to say, A Tale of Two Cities is missing. What a shame. Still, I bet these are worth a bit. Alfie nodded. Yes, but I estimate their value is probably halved because of the missing volume. Anyhow, may I... He gently retrieved the books we were holding and replaced them in the trunk, closing the lid. May I leave them here for the time being? Sure thing, said Roxy. Together we lugged the trunk under the burst sofa. Alfie, I said, what are you going to do now? Where are you going to go? He said nothing, and Roxy flashed me a look of warning. She tried a gentler approach. Your mum, Alfie, is there anyone else who, you can talk to? Well, there was just us and Biffa. His blank expression returned. It was as if the expedition to the burnt house and the rescue of the trunk of books had distracted him from his misery for a while, but now it had returned. He went to the doorway and made a kissing sound with his mouth again, and called, Hey, Biffa! Biffa! He saw us looking. She's a cat. You will have to speak to the police, I said. You can't hide here forever. He fixed me with his ice blue eyes. No, not yet. There is something I must do. What? He shook his head as if to dismiss the question like an annoying fly. I need to stay here. You promised you would help me. Well, yes, but... Did you not mean what you said? Well, yes, but... Then I stay here and you say nothing to anybody. I looked across at Roxy, who shrugged. But your mum, Alfie, I began. His nostrils flared with anger. My mother is dead. You cannot change that. What difference does it make to you? You just thought she was some weird woman living in the woods. That weird woman was my mother, dead because of me. Because of you? How? I caused the fire, he shouted. I should be lucky not to go to jail. Alfie, 11-year-olds don't go to jail, I said, trying to calm him down, but it had no effect. Who says I'm 11? I'm just guessing you're about my age, Alfie. Look. No, you look. And you, he added, turning to Roxy, who flinched. I need to stay here for a while. You need to help me. And once I've done what I need to do, it will all be fine. I promise. Promise. Please, I am beseeching you. Tell no one about me. There was a long silence. I mean a long one. All three of us just looked at one another, shifting our gazes to each other's eyes. I was going to break it, but Roxy spoke first. I could tell she was suspicious on some level, because of the witch stuff, I suppose. Okay, but you don't involve us. We could get into trouble. If anyone asks, you found this place on your own. All right, but I do need some food. Okay, and water. Okay. I said, so that is involving us quite a lot. Alfie gave a small shrug. You said you would help me. And blankets, and a fresh dressing for my arm, and some paracetamol, and a tin of crab meat. He paused, realising that it had become a long list of demands. If that's all right. Crab meat? It's my cat's favourite. She might smell it and come back, possibly. I sighed, already beginning to regret that empty offer of help. Thank you.